D-Day, Valor and Victory. Susan Rosen will bring you the outstanding History Channel presentation, Saving Our History, the making of a museum. It's a look inside the museum and the story of the Normandy invasion. After that, without commercial interruption, the military parade that's going to run through the streets of the city of New Orleans from the Superdome to the museum and back to the sports arena. And, of course, the commemorative program inside the sports arena honoring thousands of D-Day and World War II veterans in New Orleans for the grand opening. Please take note of this soap opera programming note. Passions will air at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and Days of Our Lives will air at 4. It's the best of both worlds. You don't miss a thing. Meteorologist Margaret Orr has your weather right after this.
Batten down the hatches, experts forecast a busy year of powerful hurricanes. Only LES rollaway shutters have been tested to withstand hurricane-force winds, keeping your home or business safe.
Not all storm panels are equal. LAS provided my company with peace of mind.
LAS is just a name that's been around for a long, long time, and I've been aware of their reputation.
Now's the time to prepare, not when a hurricane threatens. Prepare today with LAS's rollaway.
Lakeside Toyota's got customer cash back to you. Get $1,000 cash back on Camrys, get $1,000 cash back on Tacomas, get $1,000 cash back on Corollas, or get 0% APR financing. Lakeside Toyota's always had the #1 Toyota service facility in the state of Louisiana. So we made a $1 million investment in this facility so we can better serve you, our customers. And as always, our service is open till midnight.
The calendar yields few weeks for us to escape. Those days, we run. For we hold the pass that opens doors. Wherever we go, with our Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, we're covered. And I check worry at the border. This is my plan. To take care of their mind, their body, their spirit, their health. Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Interested in looking and feeling better, but you don't know where to start? Visit Gambit Weekly's Wellness Expo, June 10th at Lakeside Shopping Center, sponsored in part by WDSU Channel 6.
Good morning, I'm Margaret Orr, and much of the rain is pushing to the south. Good news, just cloudy skies with a few spritzes into the New Orleans area. Looks like things are going to be clearing out for the big parade. As we zoom in, here is Lee Circle right over here in the museum. There you can see just a few light sprinkles in the area at this time. Meanwhile, here is a look at our temperatures, and it's going to cool off. Temperatures right now in the mid-70s. The wind has shifted to the northeast at 17, so it's breezy, much cooler to the west. Now, it is going to remain mostly cloudy this morning, but the rain is going to end. Then this afternoon, sunny skies, highs in the mid-80s. Heat.
Sit back, relax. D-Day, Valor and Victory is coming up next.
Our regularly scheduled program will not be seen today, so we can bring you a WDSU 6 News special. Valor and Victory, the grand opening of the National D-Day Museum.
Good morning, I'm Susan Rosen, and this is an historic day for New Orleans. We are live outside our National New D-Day Museum for the official dedication ceremony. But there's so much happening today, and we don't want you to miss any of it. At 10 o'clock, we're going to have that big military parade. They're calling it the largest military parade since World War II. It features top bands and marching units from each branch of our military, plus 16 flyovers of military aircraft. So hold your ears. They say it's going to be loud. Then, starting at noon, thousands of veterans from all over the country will be at the New Orleans Arena for the grand opening celebration. Director Steven Spielberg, actor Tom Hanks, and NBC anchor Tom Brokaw are all scheduled to speak about the significance of D-Day and the significance of our new museum. Between now and then, we are going to air the History Channel's documentary on the making of the museum and our own documentary, Bridges to the Beach, about the man who made all this possible, New Orleans shipbuilder Andrew Higgins. But before we go any further, we have a reminder. Much of the downtown area is off limits to traffic because of the parade today that gets underway in about an hour. It begins near the Superdome. It will wind its way along Loyola, Howard, Magazine, and Poydras to the arena for the grand opening celebration. And as a result of our special coverage today, we want to make you aware of a couple of programming changes. All of you soap opera fans today, bear with us. Passions will air at 3 p.m. and Days of Our Lives at 4. But all you have to do right now is sit back and enjoy our live coverage. We are here again, live at the National D-Day Museum for the official dedication. So let's join some of the speakers at the podium.
As governor of the great state of Louisiana, let me just say welcome to this momentous occasion. It really is. This is so much greater than I could have even imagined. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be brief. I brought a proclamation that's going to honor this week, this whole week, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't want to be long. I'm going to hit the highlights of the proclamation. It goes this way. Whereas it has been said that D-Day was a day that made all future days possible, and whereas the museum will honor Andrew Jackson Higgins, who was credited by General Dwight D. Eisenhower as a man that won the war for us, and whereas the United States is the only allied nation which does not have an active museum, or didn't, to honor the veterans of World War II and the amphibious D-Day invasions, and whereas it is the express wish of the citizens of this great state of Louisiana to publicly honor and praise the brave, selfless patriots who have made our freedom possible, therefore, I do hereby declare the opening of the National D-Day Museum in New Orleans, Louisiana on June the 6th, 2000 as a day of remembrance, and proclaim the week of June the 6th, 2000 as National D-Day Museum Week in the state of Louisiana. And I've got the proclamation here, and I think I'll give it to Mr. Ambrose.
Thank you, Governor Foster. Ladies and gentlemen, the senior senator from the state of Louisiana, the Honorable John Breaux.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Secretary Slater, Secretary Cohen, Governor Foster, my distinguished colleagues in the United States Congress, and our very distinguished World War II veterans. And ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Ambrose was saying when we began the ceremony that we were experiencing the luck of Eisenhower as the clouds started to clear and move out and the sun is beginning to shine. You know, 56 years ago, some very brave, some very courageous, and some very, very young men landed on the beaches of northern France. And today we gather here to remember and to honor those who sacrificed so much in order that we today can live in freedom. It has been said that we can shape the future by studying the past. And this great facility behind me will be for future generations a permanent reminder of how precious freedom really is and the price that we must all pay to protect it. From the weapons of war to the uniforms of the soldiers to the Higgins landing craft that delivered the fighting men so efficiently, we of our generation will always be reminded of how much we owe to those who gave so very much. To Stephen Ambrose, whose words flow from the mouths of those who were there, to Steven Spielberg, whose pictures place us side by side with the fighting men who charged the beaches, to Tom Hanks, who makes us understand the value of every single life, the rest of America, and indeed the free world, say simply but very sincerely, thank you for reminding us how special freedom really is. I'm reminded of what the patriot Thomas Paine once observed more than 200 years ago, as our forefathers fought to gain their own freedom for the very first time. Thomas Paine said then, those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must undergo the fatigue of supporting it. Let us all today, and in future generations, who walk through the doors of this tremendous facility and understand as they walk through this facility that freedom is not free. It is worth fighting for. And for those who fought, they should be remembered, and they will always be honored. Thank you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Senator Breaux. Also with us today, as you know, is Senator Mary Landrieu. Senator Landrieu.
Good morning to Secretary Cohen, to Secretary Slater, to all of the distinguished guests here, and to our veterans in particular. When Stephen Ambrose was a very young man at the University of Wisconsin, according to the books that he's written and the stories have been told about him, one of his professors decided that they wouldn't, or they would pass up the opportunity to write term papers. They would instead do original research about the state of Wisconsin, where he was studying. And the professor said, we're going to spend our semester doing original research so we can contribute to the knowledge of the world. So we can contribute to the knowledge of the world. Stephen Ambrose wrote, I was caught up in that phrase, or the phrase caught me up. He's been caught up in it ever since. Left the field of medicine, for which he was studying as his father was a doctor, and turned to history and began contributing to the knowledge of the world. Because of what he has researched, because of what he has studied, because of the way that he has spent his life, that knowledge is represented here. And we will be able to build future generations based on that knowledge. Out of that knowledge, as Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks and Tom Brokaw and others have built on, we have been given courage. We have been inspired. We have been given hope. And this city, and this state, and this nation can build on a strong and wonderful foundation built here, which we're celebrating today. Now, it was Margaret Mead that said, a small group of committed and dedicated individuals can change the world. In fact, she said, it's never been done any other way. And these veterans, although they numbered in the hundreds of thousands, and men and women who fought, they were a relatively small group in the world. But they have, in fact, changed the world, and we are grateful to them today. Thank you all for being here, and thank all the leaders of the state and city that have, as a team, as General Eisenhower said, made this all possible. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Senator Landrieu. And I'd like to introduce also the Dean of the Louisiana Delegation, Congressman Billy Tozan.
Thank you. As we gather today in New Orleans to celebrate this amazing museum of memory and sacrifice, I think all of us ought to take a quick journey into that marvelous film that Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks presented us with all the incredible stories that they portrayed in that movie as presented to them through the veterans who told their stories to Stephen Ambrose. And let us all quickly go back to that field in Normandy where Private Ryan stood before the grave of the captain who gave his life to save him and return him home safely. And remember what Private Ryan asked of the captain there in that field of honor at Normandy, when he simply asked him if he had earned it, if he had lived a good life, if he deserved his freedom. I think that moment in that incredible movie sums it up for us today. I hope all of us can live a good life and can learn to earn and honor the sacrifice of that incredible generation that won our freedom. We celebrate their sacrifice today. And we thank Stephen Ambrose and all the donors who made possible this incredible edifice of memory where we can come, this generation, quietly remember and solemnly say thank you again. To all the veterans gathered today across America on this incredible D-Day remembrance from our generation, thank you so much.
We are honored to have with us this morning the United States Secretary of Transportation, Rodney Slater. Please join me in welcoming him.
To Governor Foster, Secretary Cohen, Mayor Morial, Archbishop Hannon, Secretary Caldero, General Jones, Admiral Lloyd, all of our distinguished allied representatives, Senator Breaux, Senator Landrieu, Congressman Tozan, and all of the members of your wonderful congressional delegation, Congressman Skelton, and yes, to Dr. Ambrose and Tom Brokaw, Tom Hanks, Mr. Spielberg, Dr. Mueller, and to the brave veterans and all of our other distinguished guests. It is, as has been said, an honor to be here today to share this important occasion, the dedication of this National D-Day Museum and the rededication of our nation to that which is good and noble. We must never forget the price that established that tenuous foothold at Normandy and the valor of the men who hit the beaches and scaled the cliffs 56 years ago today. It is said that if truth were self-evident, there would be no need for eloquence. Today, let us say thank you for the eloquence personified by the men and women who served us in those dark and difficult times. Let us say thanks for the eloquence of the lives personified by our Medal of Honor recipients. Dr. Harold Baumgarten, who spoke at the dinner last evening. And yes, let us be thankful for the words of inspiration that captured that day and that period as given to us in the book D-Day by Professor Ambrose, in the book The Greatest Generation by Tom Brokaw, and in the movie Saving Private Ryan by Mr. Spielberg and also Mr. Hanks. And yes, let us be thankful for the work of our Miss America, Heather, as she continues to lift up the work of the men and women who served us. Now, it is generally known that the Higgins boats ferried our brave men from ships to shore on that fateful day. What few may not know is that Coast Guardsmen were there along with their other fellow soldiers, and they piloted those boats to the beach. Individuals like Coxswain Marvin Perret of New Orleans. Now, I'm not a historian, but I do know that the D-Day story would not be as it is a story of victory, were it not possible for those who did the work here at home as well, led by Andrew and Jackson Higgins, and the community that he pulled together, men and women, blacks and whites, individuals from every neighborhood across this wonderful city. In essence, he was giving us the example that our nation would follow after our men and women returned, and we would be about the work of bringing our America together as, yes, a more perfect union. Understanding D-Day would also be incomplete without just one other story, if I may share it with you. the life-saving efforts of the men and women of the Coast Guard and the men on that occasion who served in Rescue Flotilla 1, composed of 60 wooden patrol boats. Rescue Flotilla 1 saved more than 1,400 lives during the Normandy invasion, almost 450 on D-Day alone. These numbers may give some insight into the scale of the operation, but not the intensity of the operation. To understand this, let us call forth, as we do in this museum, the stories. In this case, the story of one crewman and a sailor he rescued. According to reports, a stricken LTC landing craft was slowly sinking and on the verge of capsizing at any moment. Coast Guard crew cutter 16 dashed to its aid. Aboard the desperate boat were more than 30 trapped men, including a severely wounded soldier whose legs had been severed above the knees. After difficult maneuvering, the cutter was able to rescue all of the men. Yet for a moment there was the belief that for one, all hope was lost. The sailor was too wounded to make it to safety. The unfortunate sailor's plight was apparent. Yet Arthur Burkhardt Jr., a member of the cutter crew, like so many that day, disregarded his own safety and jumped over the side of the cutter and made it to the landing craft. With bombs exploding and live ammunition on board ready to ignite, Bomb Guard cared for the injured sailor. Eventually, with all hope seemingly lost, Bomb Guard historically managed to save the doomed sailor. When later asked by a correspondent why this Coast Guardsman put himself at such peril to rescue a badly wounded man, Bomb Guard simply replied, in the true character and tradition of these brave men and women, I've got a brother in the Navy myself. I've got a brother in the Navy myself. Well, as the grandson of a proud sailor of that era in the Navy himself, Sloan Slater Sr., I am truly honored to stand in the presence of greatness. Individuals who showed us the truth of the biblical phrase, suffering may endure for a night, but joy surely comes in.
The Higgins boats are commissioned by the Coast Guard, and Secretary Slater is responsible for that, for our boat, as well as for those countless thousands in World War II. Support from our armed forces has been invaluable in the building of this museum. We owe a deep debt of gratitude to all branches of the service and their leader, the United States Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, whose support included the designation of our grand opening as an official event of the Department of Defense. Please join me in welcoming him now.
Dr. Mueller, we have been engaged in the praising of so many people, so many deserving people here today and yesterday, but we haven't really paid tribute to you. And I would like to take just a moment to say, without your energy and your passion, this museum would not be here today. So I want to thank you for your tireless task to follow Secretary Slater, and I will be mindful of that expression that brevity is the wit of soul. I was thinking as the previous speakers were talking about what this museum really means and should mean to us and to all who will follow us. And last evening we heard that Steven Spielberg was referred to as the Homer of our times. Well, if Steven Spielberg is the Homer, then Stephen Ambrose must be our Thucydides. And I want to talk in terms of the history just for a moment. I recall reading some years ago an essay by Walter Lippmann. It was actually a speech. He was giving it to the 30th reunion of the class of 1910. And what he was looking out to his classmates and saying is, look what we have given up since World War I. We have become indifferent. We have become disengaged. We have become lazy. Whenever there was a hard task to meet, we took the easy way out. And then he concluded his speech, and this was on the eve of the beginning of World War II. He said that for every right that you cherish, you have a duty you must perform. For every hope that you entertain, you have an obligation you must fulfill. For every good that you wish to achieve, you must sacrifice your comfort and your ease. There is nothing for nothing any longer. And shortly thereafter, World War II broke out. And these men in front of us, and all who were in this audience, men and women, understood what he meant when he said there is nothing for nothing any longer. They gave their all and their grief for every one of us. And that is the lesson of what World War II should mean to all of us. That is what is embodied in this building of stone and glass. It is a lesson for us to remember for the future. Now, last evening I had the chance to quote from a hero of mine, Joshua Chamberlain. And I talked about his statement that in great deeds something abides and in great fields something stays. But I'd like to just quote the words of another hero of mine, also a Civil War veteran, one of our greatest Supreme Court justices, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. He said that the list of ghosts grows long, the roster of men grows short. Only one thing has not changed. As I look into your eyes, I feel the great trial in your youth has made you different. It made you citizens of the world. But we are the heirs of your sacrifice, citizens of the world that you made, and we can only stand in awe at your courage, at your sense of duty, and the sacred gift that you have offered to all people. To you belongs the honor of this day. And those who have inherited the mantle of defense, the men and women of America's armed forces, many who are here standing with us today, and those of our allied nations, today they carry on your noble work, preserving what you have created, defending the victory you have achieved, and honoring the ideals for which you struggled. So on behalf of all of our sailors and soldiers and airmen and Marines, and yes, Coast Guardsmen, who came after all the American people, Janet and I say thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to present to you one of the National D-Day Museum's most generous benefactors, Mr. Steven Spielberg, who will speak to us and introduce the museum's founder, Stephen E. Ambrose.
Thank you very much. We stand here today before something that I wish existed in every single city in this country. I really think that this is something that our children need to frequent, that our teachers need to facilitate from now into forever. Because this is the way, this is the only way young people are going to be able to have an appreciation of all the events that came before them that made their lives possible. And the man who put all this together, and the man who inspired me to come in about 2.5 years ago with just a little bit of help, was a man who really inspired me and Tom Hanks in our production of Saving Private Ryan, because he communicated to us the experiences through his eloquence of interpretive writing and communication skills, the eloquence and the horror and the first-person experiences of the veterans who fought on Omaha and Utah beaches during D-Day. I don't think Saving Private Ryan would have been as powerful a portrait of your stories if it hadn't been for one man, Stephen Ambrose, who was able to take your stories and bring them to all of us. And with that, I'd like to present the hero, the co-hero of the day, along with all the veterans here and all the Congressional Medal of Honor winners, Dr. Stephen Ambrose.
Thank you very much. And there are too many dignitaries here for me to say all of their names. But the real dignitaries, they're sitting right in front of me, and they're scattered all through this audience. The men and women of the Second World War and what they've done for us. Now, 56 years ago on this day, the word began to spread across the United States as the sun rose in New York and finally got out to San Francisco, that this was it. D-Day was here. Every family in America had a son, or a husband, or a brother, or an uncle, or a neighbor who was in England. They didn't know if they were going in on the first wave or the fifth wave, or if they were going in on D+1 or D+5, or if it would be D+ a month before they went in, but they knew that every one of them was going to go into battle. So the impulse to pray was overwhelming. The Commander-in-Chief, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, did a prayer on all of the radio stations. It had first of all been printed in the early morning editions of the paper so that the whole nation could join in this prayer. And that was done. Throughout this broad land, from New York all the way out to San Francisco, from the Great Lakes down to New Orleans and Florida and southern Texas, the churches were filled all day long with people going in to say a prayer for their loved ones, for those that they didn't know, but they realized that they were going into battle, and for our country. St. Louis Cathedral was here in New Orleans, was just overflowing the whole day long. Andrew Higgins went to the assembly plants. We've got Higgins employees here who were there, and they remember this. He went, and at each one of them, he said, our boats are going into action. They're taking our men ashore. Let us pray to God that we did it right. And they did. So what makes me happiest on this marvelous day is the way in which this museum and the street that we sit on is now named for it honors Higgins Industries and the people of New Orleans who built those landing craft that carried these men and all of the veterans around here who were involved in D-Days around the world, carried them ashore. So I want to say my own special thanks to all of you, and I know there are many of you here who work for Mr. Higgins. Thank you.
Before we open the doors, I must introduce a dear friend here with us today, former presidential nominee, veteran of World War II, recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross, and current ambassador to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Agency in Rome, the Honorable George McGovern. And I also need to recognize and thank the entire staff of the National D-Day Museum that has helped to put on this show. Would you all take a bow wherever you are, raise your hand, all around. Great, great staff. Thank you when you see them after this. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to open the doors, and I would like to ask the ribbon-cutting party, which constitutes this entire platform, and we're going to string this ribbon across in front of us here. Would you all please come forward? Everybody, and get behind this ribbon.
And there it is, the official dedication of our new D-Day Museum. Before we go any further, I'd like to point out that our coverage this morning is going to preempt the Maury Povich Show later today and Martha Stewart. An important part of what we're going to bring you this morning is the History Channel's wonderful documentary, The Making of the Museum. Dr. Libby O'Connell is the History Channel's historian. Libby, museums open around the country all the time. Why did the History Channel decide to feature the D-Day Museum?
Well, the History Channel supports a lot of major museums in the country, but this one is special. It's, as you know, the only national museum we have dedicated to D-Day, and that's a story that we feel is so important and so fundamental to our understanding of the history of the 20th century. People forget that D-Day wasn't just a turning point of World War II. It was a turning point in the 20th century.
Absolutely.
And that's one reason why we want to be part of it.
All right, let's now see the beginning of the History Channel's Making of the Museum.
Now,